It was late, past midnight, and I was the only person on an outdoor platform, the kind that's up on a viaduct above the street. Cold fluorescent light, a long yellow line painted near the edge, a digital board ticking down to the next train. 6 minutes. Just an empty platform and a wait. Nothing about it felt like the start of anything. I stood about where I always stand, a little back from the line, watching the board count down. And a man came up the stairs onto the platform behind me. I heard him, didn't really look, just the ordinary awareness you keep of another body on an empty platform. There was a whole platform, 80, 100 feet of it, both directions completely empty, and he came and stood close behind me. Close. Closer than two strangers stand when there's 100 empty feet to choose from. I did the thing you do. I moved. Casual, like I just decided I wanted to be further down. I walked maybe 30 feet along the platform and stopped again near a pillar. And in the reflection of the dark glass of the shelter, I watched him follow. Not fast, not obvious. He drifted down after me and settled again, close behind me, the same exact distance, like a held position. So I wasn't imagining the first time. And here's the thing I keep coming back to. He didn't say anything. He didn't ask me for a light or the time or money, didn't mutter, didn't make a single sound. A man who wants to scare you or talk to you does something with his mouth. This man did nothing. He just stood at my shoulder, facing the tracks the same way I was, like we were two people waiting for the same train. Which, it turned out, we were not. The board said 4 minutes. I checked it more than I needed to, because looking at the board gave me a reason to half turn and catch him in the edge of my vision. He never looked at the board. Not once. He wasn't checking how long until the train. He already knew. He was just standing there, slightly behind me and to the side, near enough that I could hear him breathing, watching the dark mouth of the tunnel where the train would come from. I told myself to move again, but I'd already moved once and he'd followed. And some animal part of me knew that moving a second time would make it real. So I did the small, stupid, human thing. I took out my phone and held it up and pretended to be on a call. "Hey, yeah, I'm nearly on the train. I'll be there in 20. To no one, telling the empty air that someone was expecting me. He didn't react at all. The distance behind me didn't change. 3 minutes, and down in the tunnel, far off, I saw the first gray wash of light on the tiles. The train, still out of sight, but its headlights starting to climb the dark. And the man behind me shifted. For the first time since he'd come up those stairs, he moved. A small, settling step, a weight change, the way a person sets their feet right before they're going to do something. Not toward the stairs, not away. A half step in, toward me, toward the line. I want to describe how wrong it felt because I had no proof of anything. He hadn't touched me. He hadn't spoken. If I'd called for help, what would I have said? A man is standing near me on a train platform? But my whole body had gone cold and certain in a way my mouth couldn't argue with. The light in the tunnel was growing. The rails had started to sing, that high metal hum they make before you can hear the train itself. And he had timed his step to it. He moved when the light moved. I thought about getting away from the edge. And I realized with a kind of sick clarity that I couldn't just step back because he was behind me and to the side, between me and the open platform. And the only clear space left to me was forward, toward the line, toward the drop. He hadn't cornered me with his hands. He'd done it with where he chose to stand. Over 4 slow minutes, while I thought the danger was that he might say something. The headlight cleared the mouth of the tunnel. 2 white eyes, and behind them the whole weight of the train, and the wind it pushes ahead of itself, coming up the platform like a held breath let go. The board flipped to the word arriving. And in the second the train's nose came out of the dark, the exact second, not a beat before, not a beat after, I felt two things at once. The air of the train hit the back of my legs, and a hand touched my back, flat, between the shoulder blades. A push just starting. And I caught myself. Not bravely, I want to be honest, there was nothing brave about it. My body just dropped, knees buckling, weight going down and back instead of forward, the way you catch yourself at the top of a stair you didn't see. The push met a person who was already falling the wrong way for it, and instead of going over the line, I went down onto the concrete, hard, on my hip and my hand, the train roaring past 2 feet from my face, the wind of it tearing the hair across my eyes. The air saved me. The hand was a half-second late. The train was stopping. Brakes screaming, the long silver side of it sliding to a halt right where I was sprawled. And I scrambled, crab-walked backward across the platform on my hands, not even getting up, just getting away from the edge, until my back hit the shelter wall and I could see him. He was standing exactly where he'd been, looking down at me on the ground. No surprise on his face. No, "Oh my God, are you okay?" None of the things a person does when someone falls in front of them. He just looked, the way you look at a thing that didn't work. The doors opened. A bright, empty, lit-up car, the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. And I did not take my eyes off him as I got up and went sideways through those doors, fast, into the light, and stood in the middle of the car gripping a pole with both hands. He didn't follow me on. He didn't run, didn't react, didn't try again. He just turned and started walking, unhurried, back toward the stairs, like a man whose moment had already passed. The doors closed. The train pulled out. And through the glass, as we slid away, I watched him go down the stairs, calm, like a man whose train simply hadn't come. No one else on the platform, no camera I could point to that would have seen anything but a woman who tripped. That's the part that stayed in me. If I'd gone over, that's exactly what it would have been on every report. A late-night fall, a woman too close to the edge, an accident with a witness who'd already walked away. I sat down on the train and shook for a long time. I don't stand near the edge anymore, ever, even in daylight, even in a crowd. I stand with my back to a wall or a pillar and the open platform in front of me where I can see it. He already knew when the train was coming. He'd just been waiting for it. It was a weeknight, late, and I got on a nearly empty train to go a long way across the city. The kind of trip that's 10, 11 stops, 20-some minutes underground. One of those late trains where a whole car has maybe 3 or 4 people scattered in it. I sat near a door, bag on my lap, earbuds in but no music, just to look unavailable. A few seats down, across the aisle, there was one man, and after a minute I noticed he was looking at me. Not glancing, looking. The kind of look that doesn't move when you look back, that just sits on you, patient, while the train rocks. And after a station or two, he said something to me. I'm not even going to repeat it because it doesn't matter what it was. It was the sort of low, smiling thing a man says when he wants to see what you'll do. I gave him nothing, looked back at the dark window, and told myself that was the end of it. It was not the end of it. He kept watching me, and the watching had changed. There was something pleased in it now, like I'd answered a question by not answering. So at the next stop, when the doors opened, I got up and walked off the train. And then, just before the doors shut, I stepped back on, into the next car down. The old trick. Let him think I'd gotten off, slip into the car behind. The doors closed, the train moved, and for one stop I had a whole new car, 3 new strangers, and no him. I let myself breathe. At the next station, the doors opened. A couple of people shuffled on and off, and through the little window in the door at the end of my car, the door between cars, I saw him come through. From the car I'd left, through the rattling gangway, into mine. Unhurried. He'd watched which car I got back into, walked up the platform, and just stepped through the connecting door like it was nothing. And it hit me that the door wasn't locked. None of them were. I hadn't gotten into a different room. I just moved down the same train. I want to be honest about the panic because it wasn't loud. It was this quiet, sinking arithmetic. I'd done the smart thing. I'd changed cars, and it had bought me exactly one stop. Because the thing I was inside of had no other cars to go to that weren't also him. I could walk to the front of the train or the back of the train, and all I'd be doing is choosing which end of the same sealed box to stand in, while a man who'd already shown me he'd follow chose when to walk down it. There was no another car. There was just further in. He didn't sit near me this time. He sat directly across the aisle, facing me, and he didn't say anything else, didn't need to, because the saying was over and now it was just the looking. Steady, both feet planted, hands on his knees, watching me the way you watch something you've decided is yours and are just waiting to collect. I looked at the map strip above the doors. 6 stops to mine, 6 stops of him, 3 feet away, in a car that had quietly emptied to just the 2 of us and 1 man asleep at the far end. So I went to do it again. Next stop, the doors opened, and I stood up to step off and walk a couple of cars down, and he stood up too. Instantly, before I'd taken a step, the same beat I rose, he rose, already turning for the door at his end, already moving to meet wherever I'd land. And I stopped, half out of my seat, and sat back down. Because there was no point now. The move only works if he doesn't see it, and he wasn't going to let me out of his sight again. The doors closed with both of us still on. I tried to get help the quiet way. I made eye contact with the one other awake passenger, a guy at the far end, and tried to put, "Please notice this," into my face. He looked at me, looked at the man across from me, and looked back down at his phone. Not cruel, just a tired person at midnight deciding it wasn't his problem. And I understood, because what would I even have said? No one had touched me. No one had shouted. It was a man sitting on a train looking at a woman, which is the most ordinary and unprovable thing in the world, right up until the second it isn't. I thought about getting off early, just bailing at a random station to break it. But I pictured it, me, alone, on some platform I didn't know, at 1 a.m, and him stepping off after me, and now it's just the 2 of us in a tiled box underground with no train, no other passengers, no map of where the exits are. The train, awful as it was, at least had other people and lights and a door that opened on a schedule. A strange, empty platform had none of that. I had to ride it to a stop I could actually use. So I picked my real stop, a big interchange, the busiest one on the line. Well lit, staffed even late, the kind of platform that's never empty. And I made a plan, barely a plan, more a thing to hold on to. I wasn't going to try to outrun him or outtime him. He'd matched me at everything all night. He'd matched me off the train too. What he couldn't match was other people. So the plan was simple, and it was the opposite of every instinct. Get off where the crowd was thickest and stay inside it. 2 stops out, I felt him get ready. Nothing dramatic, just that same weight shift, the hands coming off the knees, the lean forward of a man preparing to stand when I stood. He was going to be right behind me on that platform. I knew it. My stop. The train slowed. The platform slid up outside the glass. Bright and, thank God, packed. A whole crowd waiting to board. The doors open. And I did not move. I made myself stand there, 1 beat, 2, looking at my phone like I had 3 more stops to go, feeling him across the car holding 2, waiting for me, both of us frozen in a little contest of who blinks. And on the 3rd beat, with the chime already sounding and the doors starting to slide shut, I stepped through them. I went sideways through the closing doors and straight into the crowd. Not away from the people, into them. The thickest part of the knot waiting to board, shoulder to shoulder between strangers. And then toward the lit end of the platform, where 2 transit staff in vests stood by the stairs. I didn't run. I planted myself in the middle of all those bodies and turned around. And he was off the train. The doors hadn't caught him, he'd made them. He was on the platform too. But he stopped. At the edge of the crowd, where the empty platform became people. Everything he'd done all night, he'd done in an empty car with no one watching. Here, there was nowhere to do it. I stayed in the crowd until it moved, and I moved with it, up the stairs and into the ticket hall and past the gates, near a booth with an actual person in it. And then I turned. And down at the bottom of the stairs he was standing, alone now, the crowd thinning around him, looking up at me. He didn't come up, not past the gates, not under the lights, not toward the booth and the clerk and the camera. So he stayed at the bottom in the dark, and I walked out into the street. I take late trains differently now. I sit in the car with the most people, and I don't play the change cars game anymore. Because what saved me in the end wasn't a clever door or a half-second gap. It was other people, a crowd, a place he couldn't be himself in. I'd spent the whole ride thinking that if I just kept moving, I'd get away from him. I never did, not until I stopped moving and stood with everyone else. My stop is the last useful one on the line out to where I live. A small suburban station, the kind with no booth, no staff after dark, just a platform and a parking lot and a long, quiet road home. I take the late train 2 or 3 nights a week, and I've done that walk 1,000 times. 8, 9 minutes from the platform to my door, mostly past dark houses and hedges. It's the part of the trip I'd stopped thinking about. It's the part I think about now. There were maybe 6 of us who got off at that stop. And I noticed him only because of how unnoticeable he was working to be. A man, ordinary coat, hands in his pockets, who got off the same car as me and then sort of waited. Let everyone else go up the ramp first. Hung back, adjusting nothing, looking at nothing, until the platform had cleared and it was just me heading for the exit and him, some distance behind, heading the same way. By the time I was at the top of the ramp, the other 4 had scattered to cars in the dark. It was him and me on the road. At first, I told myself he just lived out my way. People do. It's a residential line. Everyone on it is walking home to one of these streets. So I didn't panic. I just kept a normal pace and listened. And his footsteps stayed at exactly my distance. When I sped up a little, testing, casual, the gap held. When I slowed at a corner, the footsteps behind me slowed too. He wasn't catching up. He wasn't dropping back. He was keeping me at a fixed distance, the way you keep a fish on a line you don't want to snap. I did what they tell you to do. I crossed the road, just walked across to the other sidewalk, smoothly, like I'd meant to. And a few seconds later, behind me, I heard his footsteps change surface, heard him step off the curb and cross too. onto my side. There's no innocent version of that. A man going home doesn't cross the road to stay behind a stranger. That was the moment I stopped pretending I didn't know what was happening. My street has no shops, nothing open, no one out at that hour. Just rows of houses, most of them dark, the odd one with a hall light on behind curtains. And I started doing the math of it as I walked. Which house had a light? Which one had a car in the drive? How far to my own door? And whether getting there was good or bad. Because the last thing you want to do with someone behind you is show him which door is yours. My own home, the place I was walking toward, was the one place I couldn't safely go. If I went in, he'd know exactly where I slept. So I kept walking past the turn to my house, out into more dark. And underneath the fear of him, there was a second thing I couldn't place. A sound. Low, somewhere back in the dark behind us, the kind of soft, mechanical hum a quiet street has too much of at night. A boiler, a fridge in someone's garage, an air conditioner. I half noticed it and filed it under nothing, because every time I glanced back, all I saw was him, the man, on foot, at his fixed distance, and no headlights anywhere on the road. So I kept my eyes on the danger I could see, and let the other things stay a sound I didn't have to think about. I think about it now. He started talking, not shouting, worse than shouting, low and even from behind me, close enough that I knew exactly how close he was. Telling me to wait, to hold on a second, that he just wanted to talk to me. My name was not in it, he didn't know my name, but everything else in his voice said he already thought of me as something he'd caught. And I did not turn around, did not answer, did not run yet, because running tells them it's time. And I was looking for the one thing on that whole dark street worth running to. Up ahead on the left, one house had a deeper, dark front garden with a path up to a porch. And I remembered, because I walked past it every day, that the house had one of those motion sensor lights over the door. A light that comes on by itself when something moves onto the path. I'd cursed that light 100 times for flicking on when a cat crossed. Now it was the only weapon on the street. A light I could trigger without touching anything. A way to make a dark house suddenly look awake, and to put myself inside a bright circle where a man would have to step into the light to reach me. I want to be honest about the decision, because it wasn't a plan, it was a lunge. I cut left, off the sidewalk, straight up that stranger's path, and the motion light cracked on, a hard white flood over the whole front garden, over me, over the path behind me. And I went to the door and I hit it, both fists, and I called out, not screaming, but loud and clear, the most useful words I had. Please, someone's following me, please. Lights in a man's voice answered from inside almost at once. And the porch, the bright, lit, suddenly awake porch, became the safest 6 feet of pavement in the world. The man behind me had stopped at the edge of the garden, right at the line where the motion light ended and the dark began, like the light was a wall he couldn't step through. He stood there, half in shadow, looking at me up on the lit porch, and for a second nobody moved. Me at the door, him at the dark edge. The whole thing balanced on whether the person inside that house was really going to open it. And then the inside door opened. A man in a dressing gown, phone already in his hand, looking past me at the figure on his path. And the homeowner said the thing that ended it. Loud, flat, straight at the man in the dark. I'm calling the police right now. They're on the line. And he held the phone up. That was it. That was the whole magic word. Not a weapon, not a threat, not a confrontation. Just an ordinary man saying, the call is already happening. And the figure at the edge of the light turned to go. And here is where the night stopped making the kind of sense I'd been telling myself. Because he didn't run into the dark. He didn't run back toward the station, or cut between houses, or do any of the things a lone man on foot does when a porch light catches him and the police are coming. He turned and went to the road. Fast, direct, certain, like he was going to a known place. And the road, where I'd seen nothing, where there had been no headlights the whole walk. The road answered him. A car that had been sitting at the curb a little way down, dark, parked, engine running the whole time, suddenly was a car with its door already swinging open for him. There was someone in it, at the wheel. A second person who I had never seen, who had never gotten out, who had been sitting in a dark, idling car on a dark street the entire length of my walk home. That was the engine I'd heard and told myself was a fridge. That was the running motor with no headlights. It had been pacing us, pacing me, the whole way, hanging back in the dark with its lights off, keeping level with a man on foot who was walking a woman somewhere the car could meet them. And the second the homeowner said, "Police," the two halves of it snapped together in front of me. The man on foot wasn't a lone follower who'd improvised after seeing me on the train. He was the walking half of a pair. The porch light didn't just scare off a man, it interrupted a handoff. He got in. The doors shut. And the car, which still, even then, did not turn its headlights on, pulled away from the curb and went off down the dark street and around a corner and was gone. No lights, no plate I could read in the dark, no faces. Two people, one car, gone into the suburb like they'd never been there, in under 10 seconds, the moment a stranger said a word into a phone. And then it was just me, shaking on a stranger's porch, and a kind man in a dressing gown saying, come in, sit down, they're coming." That's the part I can't put down. The whole walk, I was afraid of the man behind me, the footsteps, the voice, how close he was. He was never the whole danger. He was just the half of it I could see. I got to choose a porch. If I hadn't, the choosing would have been done in that car. I moved, in the end, and I never take that last train to that little dark stop anymore, because I know now what that stop really is. It's the place where the system that carries everyone home safely just stops carrying, drops you at the edge of the lit world, and lets you walk the rest alone. And the ones who understand that, they don't wait at your door. They get on your train and they bring a car. And whoever's walking you home tonight, and whatever's idling behind it in the dark with no lights waiting, stay in the light, get to a door, and let's never meet. 3 last trains. A man on a platform who'd worked out that a train on time is a machine, and stood behind me doing nothing until the 2 seconds it took to arrive. A man on a late car who taught me that changing seats inside a sealed box isn't escape, it's just rearranging the trap. And a man who walked me home through the dark and turned out to be the half of it I was allowed to see. All of it on the safe part of the night, all of it on the system that's supposed to carry you home. So before you close the tab, ask yourself the quiet question. Of those 3, the man who timed the train, the man who followed me car to car, the one who wasn't walking alone, which would you least want behind you on the last train tonight? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe so the next one reaches you before your stop does. And the next time you stand on a yellow line, or change cars to lose someone, or walk the last dark stretch from the station, notice who got off when you did, and listen for the engine that doesn't fade.